So you want to get your deal packaging business up and running. You want to get off the ground. Some of the steps that you've got to take to make sure that when you get your deal packaging business up and running, you're not going to get at the door telling you need to close it back down again. Take action, refine as you go along. Do it directly on Companies House website, or you can use a company like Your Formations where you can get a company set up and pay a small fee. You've probably got, depending on how you're set up, £1,000 to £2,000 worth of fees. But once you sell one deal, you are already in profit. You show me another business that is as easy to get into profit as that. So you want to get your deal packaging business up and running. You want to get off the ground. Well, let's cover some of the compliance. Boring, I know, but you got to do it. Let's cover some of the compliance, some of the steps that you've got to take to make sure that when you get your deal packaging business up and running, you're not going to get at the door telling you need to close it back down again. So the first thing you need to do, step one, when you want to set up your deal packaging business is, of course, to register the company. So get yourself on Companies House. Make sure the name that you want is available. My personal advice, don't overthink the name. Everyone thinks the name has to be life-changing and deeply meaningful. Just give it a name. And by the way, you can change it incredibly easy later on if you decide that you want to change the name. I believe our deal packaging business has changed the name a couple of times now, but that's fine. That's my point. Take action, refine as you go along. Anyway, go into Companies House. Now, you've got two ways of registering a company. You can do it directly on Companies House website, or you can use a company like Your Formations where you can get a company set up and pay a small fee. It's quite straightforward. You could also then use them to have your registered address as well, so you don't have to put your home address onto Companies House, which is, of course, public record for everybody to see. Now, when you register a company, it's about £50. If you use a service, you might be paying like £100, and some of those services are going to renew on an annual basis if you're using things like an address, but that's absolutely fine. Personally, I would do the latter. It's a very easy way to go about it, and having the address is a massive plus. What else do you need to do to stay compliant then? Well, a very simple one, let's start with an easy win, is register with the ICO. Now, that's relatively cheap. I think it's around £40 to £60 depending on your organization's size, and that's just going to make sure that you're handling data in the correct way. Fairly quick to do. You'll get yourself a certificate, you'll renew it every year, they'll get a little bit of money. You probably won't have your world rocked by it, but it will keep you on the right side of the law. One thing I should mention in relation to companies is SIC codes. Lots of people get hung up on SIC codes. What SIC code should I give my company? Well, simple terms, if you're a deal sourcer or deal packager, you are effectively an estate agent. So you should use the same SIC codes that an estate agent would use, which is ordinarily 68310. But double check, if you're adding other services, you might want to add another SIC code. Again, you can change these later on, but initially it's helpful to get it right, because when you go to the bank to open your bank account, they're going to ask you what the nature of your business is, and they're going to marry that up with the SIC code that you provide them with. Next up, we've got bank accounts. Now, it's important with a bank account to make sure you not only have the bank account, but if you are taking deposits from clients, you will also need a client account. So make sure you go to a provider that can offer you this, like a mainstream bank ordinarily can and will, but some of them will have delays. So get this process going as soon as possible. So you want not just your main account, which is where you'll obviously take your day-to-day business funds, but also your client account. And that's if you're taking a retainer from a client and you're holding it. Let's say, for example, your client gives you 50% of a fee, you go out and find a property for them, and then they're going to pay you the other 50%. You'll need a client account to hold those funds. That is a compliance matter, which also then means you'll need to be registered for a client money protection scheme. There's different schemes like Money Shield and others around that you can register for. There is a cost to those, about £400 or £500 ordinarily. So again, if you're taking deposits, you will need to factor this in. I say if, because you don't have to take deposits, by the way, but of course, taking a deposit from somebody gives you an element of security. If you're waiting until completion, then you don't necessarily have that same amount of security. So I personally recommend just getting a client account, getting client money protection. Look, deal packaging is a very unique business. You've probably got, depending on how you're set up, £1,000 to £2,000 worth of fees. But once you sell one deal, you are already in profit. You show me another business that is as easy to get into profit as that. So you've only got to sell one deal, you've recouped all of those costs. Now, the other thing that you have to do then is register directly with HMRC for AML, that's anti-money laundering. So you need to make sure that you register with HMRC for AML. In order to do that, you'll need to go through certain criteria, and one of those will be that you'll have to have done some actual AML training. You can find AML training readily available online and relatively inexpensive. You can do a few hours worth of AML training, put that on your AML HMRC application to show that you've actually done that, and then there's other things that they'll want to know that you've got in place, like your risk assessment measures, and you've got a competent person overseeing compliance from an AML perspective. Next thing you will need to make sure you've got is insurance. So professional indemnity insurance in particular, because we are professionally advising people and we want to indemnify ourselves in the event that something should potentially go wrong. You may want other insurances like public liability, if you're employing people, employer's liability, but the key one for deal packages is professional indemnity. In fact, some of your ombudsman will require that you have a certain amount. Now, a minimum, I would say, is £100,000 of cover. Personally, I recommend getting higher. There's no harm in getting higher. Yes, you might pay slightly more on a premium, but insurance, if you ever need it, which God forbid you do, is going to turn out to be worth its weight in gold. And make sure you actually check your insurance, what it does cover you for and what it doesn't cover you for as well, which leads me nicely on then to the ombudsman themselves. Now, you can either register with the PRS, that's the Property Redress Scheme, or the TPO, which is the Property Ombudsman. Now, these are complaint handling services effectively. So if somebody's got a problem with what you're doing and they exhaust your complaints procedure, which also you should have, by the way, then they can complain to the Ombudsman and they will potentially mediate and deal with those particular complaints. Now, this is an important non-negotiable measure. You must register with one of those. You only need an entry-level membership, and usually that's fairly low cost, so £150 to £200, and that will cover you. And also you get to put the logo on your email signatures and look super professional as well. Last, but by no means least, if you want to set up your deal sourcing business, you're going to need contracts, some contracts, and some more contracts. You're going to need NDAs that are robust and that will actually uphold in a court of law should you ever have to use one. Exclusivity agreements, so that when you're offering to sell a property for someone, they don't go and sell it to somebody else in the meantime once you've spent a load of time marketing it to your investor list. And then you're going to need things like fixed fee retainer agreements or percentage agreements, depending on how you're structuring your deal. Are you charging people 1% of the purchase price, 2% of the purchase price? Are you charging them 5 grand, 10 grand? However you're going to charge them, you're going to need a contract and terms and conditions that relate, and ideally ones that cover you and that place a duty of responsibility on the buyer to make sure they've carried out their own due diligence in addition to yours, which, by the way, should still be good. But you're going to need the right contracts. Do not cut corners on the contracts. We've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds getting the right contracts in place. It's one of the reasons we now make those contracts readily available for anyone that's within the academy, to save them thousands of pounds having to get those contracts in place. But there's a lot of contracts that you will need to pull around. Don't just go on ChatGPT and say, write me a contract, and then pray that it actually holds up if you ever make it to court, which God forbid you do. But this is business, and that's a reality sometimes of doing business. So that's the exciting compliance and paperwork and stuff that you're going to need to get your deal sourcing or deal packaging. By the way, I don't care which one you call it. I use those terms interchangeably. Business up and running and off the ground. If you think that I've missed any, then please do add them to the comments. I value all of your contributions. And of course, if you like this content, you find it useful and you want some more, baby, then click the like, subscribe, and the bell icon, and I will help to make the rest of your life the best of your life. You're welcome.